Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Beginner Breakdown. My name is Alex Moellering. Hopefully you can hear me a little better this time. And tonight, I have a question, a very important question. My question is, what is your alignment? For those who are familiar with, RPGs, those kind of role-playing games and some of those systems, alignments can be involved. There's good, evil, chaotic, neutral. You might have seen some of those spreadsheets or flowcharts or... Well, we're not exactly going to be talking about that, but I'm a fan, so I wanted to leave that reference in. In chess, while we are going to be seeing some pretty chaotic positions and some pretty evil moves, alignment really just refers to pieces on the board actually being lined up, right? So multiple pieces of your own that are in a straight line or of your opponent's, and this can be on a rank, any of the kind of horizontal axes of the board, a file, any of the vertical axes, or a diagonal. We're going to be looking for all of those. It can be your own pieces or your opponent's, but there's so many tactics in chess that have to do with alignment. It's one of what I would call a tactical signal, where if you see alignments in a position, it should be a note to you to maybe check and see if there's a tactic. But if we start to think about it, you can think already there's skewers, pins, discoveries, batteries, doubled rooks, right? All of these things have to do with alignment, and we're going to be exploring a bunch of them. So if you're still a little confused as to where we're going, don't worry, we're going to get there together. All right, so let's start off here. So in this position, it is black to move. And if we take a look, we can start to see there are some alignments in the position. Now, there's almost always alignments on the back rank, right? Because it's where all the pieces start. And unless it's very late in the endgame and you have a way to infiltrate, that's not super useful to us. But if I take a look at this position, I notice immediately that white has an alignment, a very important one, between two pieces, the king and the queen, right? Looking for the most important pieces on the board, the king is always in that conversation, and then either a queen or a rook, or depending on the position, sometimes even a pawn, like a very far pushed pawn, can be super important. And if they're on the same line, there's tactical opportunities that we should be looking out for. So does anyone in person or in the stream have any idea what black should do here? I'm going to be giving a lot of examples tonight, so we're not going to be spending a super long time on any of them. But if you're watching later on YouTube, then always feel free to pause the video and try and find the answer yourself. But a few people in the chat here already finding the right idea. The move here is rook to g5. Check. We are defended by the queen. And because these two pieces are in the same line, this is a fork. We have attacked both the king and the queen. The queen cannot be saved and will have to be traded for the rook. If the king just moves, we will simply just take the queen and you won't even get a rook for it. So this is the power that watching for alignments can do. The thing is, they're complex because they can lead to a whole bunch of different tactical ideas. So just seeing one doesn't automatically tell you that there is a tactic or where it is, but paying attention can help you find a whole host of different possibilities. Here's another example. Oops, let me go to the next chapter. All right, in this position, I believe we are playing with, it says the black pieces here. So it is actually black to move, and in this position, black played the move, very natural, knight takes f5, taking the rook. But it is white to move. I think there was some big exchange on f5, and white now has a way to cause black some problems using an alignment. So does anyone have any idea what we should do here with the white pieces?
Bishop on e6?
Yes, bishop e6. Another alignment, right? We notice, one, you can see that the king and the knight are on the same diagonal, but we don't really have a great way to attack that, right? We can play bishop to g6, but then it just gets captured. But the rook and the knight are also lined up on a diagonal, which means that bishop to e6 here is going to do the trick. The problem for black is even though they could move this rook to a bunch of squares to defend the knight, anywhere they move it is still covered by our piece. Another kind of fun example here. So another fork that we're just going to win material. Black's going to have to play some move, and we're going to pick up that knight. All right, here's another one. In this position, it is black to move and find the best continuation. This one's a little tricky. It involves a few different steps. But see if you can find the best move here for black and use this idea of alignments to maybe clue you into it. Do you have an idea?
Rook cross B1.
Okay, and then rook takes.
And rook on E2.
Very good. So the alignment in question here is that the king and bishop are lined up. Now the queen and king are lined up, but we can't access that diagonal. But this is something we could access. We would love to play rook to E2 right away. Sorry, I have a sneeze. Trying not to do that. We would love to play this right away because this bishop is undefended, but it's covered. But we can lure the other rook away by first taking here. It has to take back, and after we can now play rook to E2 check, forking the king and the bishop. So these are three different examples of forks, one on a rank, one on a file, one on a diagonal, in which we're able to win material because two of our opponent's pieces were lined up in a straight line and one of our pieces could infiltrate. But this leads us to an interesting question. And that question is that always the most important thing? In this position, it is white to move. See if you can find the best move here for white. Well, did you see it? Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to give the chat a minute because you saw the move. King what?
Cross pawn. Queen cross pawn.
Yeah. How come? Why is that the right move?
To take the rook.
Or the knight, yeah. So this is kind of a red herring, right? Because people will see that the queen and king are lined up and immediately think, oh, I got to find a way to get a rook to this file because that would be so good. That would be good. That is important to notice. And maybe with a few moves later, you might be able to set something up. But if it's going to take a few moves, your opponent might always have a way to defend. And we have a move we can play in one that causes a problem. Queen takes B7. And the problem is these two pieces are lined up, right? They're in a diagonal. And we now have, again, forked this rook and this knight. And there is no way to save them both. We're going to win something for sure here. If you move the knight, I will take the rook. If you move the rook, I will take, well, here I will still take the rook. But if you move the rook somewhere to safety, I will simply take the knight. And you cannot move any piece to defend both. You're always going to leave one hanging. So this type of alignment is always really important to keep an eye on. Here is another example. But this one's a little different. It's black to move, and see if you can spot the alignment and find the best move because of it.
Is it the pawn on F4?
Yeah, right? So here's what's really funny, right? This is a pawn fork. We can push pawn to F4, or well, wait, what if the bishop just takes? Yeah, I like your idea, right? We would love to see that these two pieces are aligned and we can attack them both. But the bishop's just going to take. We're not defended enough. How can we solve that problem?
What if bishop cross bishop?
Okay, what if bishop cross bishop?
And you push the pawn.
Because now the knight's going to be there, right? So first we take, we get rid of this annoying bishop that's going to be able to recapture our pawn, and we play this pawn fork. And something that I never thought about until I really started looking into this idea of alignment is every pawn fork is always going to involve an alignment because it only attacks one rank at a time. So if you see an alignment on a rank, you can always keep an eye out for a pawn fork. It might just work, right? It will happen every time. Here's another example. This time it is black to move. And try and find the winning idea. Again, look out for those alignments. They're really going to pay off. And the other thing you might notice is that in some of these examples, we've used our idea of forcing moves, which is where we can play a move that really limits what our opponent's options are. So in that last example, we played a capture. Previously, we played a check. So always be looking out for those forcing moves because we can manipulate the position to be what we want in our heads by limiting our opponent's options. If you want more details on that, there's a video that I did a while ago, actually 2 now, on forcing moves. Feel free to check either of them out for more details on that. But it seems like a few people in the chat have found the right idea. In this position, we can do a pawn fork again because notice that these 2 pieces are in an alignment, right? We have their pawn fork distance away. The problem is we can't get there in one move, but if we start with g5, there's no time for them to stop us from pushing to g4 because we're attacking a piece. We're defended by our bishop and knight, so this bishop has to retreat somewhere, and then we can get a nice pawn fork on these 2 pieces. So forcing moves really come in handy when we're looking for any tactics, but these alignments prove an excellent example of why. Okay, next example. It is, I believe it is white to move. Yes, it is white to move. This is a tricky one, but again, think about the idea of alignments. You got it?
Yeah.
What do you see?
Queen on b6.
Queen to b6, okay. What's your idea?
If the queen cross queen and knight on b6.
We take and we fork the king and the rook. That looks nice, but does our opponent have to take our queen?
No.
They could just like defend their own, right? They could maybe play something like this, or actually the queen's already defended. They might not even have to do that. So that's not a bad move, but it's not forcing enough. We need something a little more forcing to manipulate this position. You got it?
Rook cross pawn.
Where? On e7?
Yes.
What's your idea?
And then you push the pawn.
Yes, another pawn fork, right? In this case, we see that the queen and king have an alignment. They're on the same rank. And if we could attack them both on that, we would be great. We have this nice forcing move, rook to e7, that's going to force the king and queen apart. And we can now fork the 2 of them. Our knight defends. And our queen does. So you can't just take back. I'm happy to capture. So pawn forks, a nice, very subtle example of how alignment comes into play in all kinds of unexpected ways. But it goes a little beyond that. There is a bit of a question that last example brought up where we thought there was a bit of a knight fork. So in this example, see if you can find the best move for black. Not super tricky.
Is knight on f3.
Yeah, so in this example, it's very simple. It's just knight to f3, I think. Wait. Oh, well, it was white to move and white played bishop takes rook, but they had missed that we have this threat of knight to f3. So the idea is the same, right? We're forking the king and the queen. And the thing is, this is not an example of alignment, right? Because these pieces are not on the same line. They don't share a rank or a file or a diagonal. They're on different axes. So this is not really a question of alignment. It's still a tactic we can find. So the knight forks count as alignments? Well, again, the thing with alignment is it includes a lot of things, right? All pawn forks involve that alignment because pawns only attack the 2 squares diagonally in front, so they always have to be on the same rank. Knights are more complicated. Sometimes they attack pieces that are not aligned, but in other cases, it's a little different. White to move and play here. It's white to move, pretty sure. It's not, it's black to move. Black played this move because they're silly. Now it's white to move.
Knight on b4, checking the king.
Yes, yes. Black did not pay attention to the threat. They thought I'm just going to attack a piece. And this example is a knight fork that does involve an alignment. So I'd want you to take this point away. Just because you see a tactic, right, like a knight fork or just any fork really in general, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a question of alignment. But if you see an alignment, you should look for a tactic because often they will involve them, right? You can find tactics that don't involve alignments, but a lot of them do. In this case, this knight fork happens to attack pieces on the same line. So always something good to just keep an eye out for. Okay, here's our next example. it is black to move. This one's maybe not as straightforward, but
Is it knight on D4?
okay, how come? What's your plan?
Attacking the queen and the bishop?
Okay, so we hit the queen and the bishop. Well, what if I just move my queen? My bishop's defended by the knight, so if you want to trade, you can trade. Any idea? Yes, I don't know your name. El Polo Go Hombre, something like that. I think it's Spanish now that I see it, but yes, you got the right idea. We have knight d4 as a forcing move to force the queen away, but not because we want to worry about the queen. I mean, if she goes here, we can. But it's noticing an alignment in this position, a very common one in the starting position, of the king and the queenside rook, where they are a perfect knight's distance away in their alignment. So if we play knight d4, this queen has to move, otherwise we're going to take it. And our follow-up is knight to c2 check, forking the queen and rook, or the king and rook, another instance of alignment. And also notice that if the queen tries to escape here, this is also an alignment. It's a vertical one. And this time we can play knight to c2, and actually we're not just going to get the rook, we're also getting the queen. Really, really nice. Okay, next example. Another one, variation on a theme. It is white to move.
Is it no check on A8?
Okay. What's your idea?
Knight on E5?
Yeah, so the idea is we're forcing, with rook to a8, we're forcing the black king to move up, and we can follow this up with knight to e5 check, forking the king and queen. And notice again, we have an issue of alignment here. It might not look like it, and you might be like, oh, this is just a knight fork. But these pieces are now arranged diagonally. So knights can attack ranks, files, and diagonals with forks. So if you see an alignment, it could mean your knight could be an important piece, right? They can do more than just alignments, but super strong here, right? And someone said knight d5 first. Knight d5 first probably also works because you're cutting off this checkmating square. Maybe knight d5 and I play queen to e6 and I can like block here on c8 and I'm getting a rook for a queen instead of a knight for a queen. So it's maybe slightly inferior, but I think it still is going to get the job done. But what's actually, really funny about this is check, king e6, and yeah, we can simply take and we're doing fine. So always pay attention to these alignments, right? In this case, it was a forcing move. The alignment wasn't in the position, but we said, oh, we have a forcing check that is going to line up the king and queen, right? We can imagine this would work with a pin or a discovery just as well. Okay. This is an example that's going to show something a little bit different. In this position, black played the move c5. And it's white to move. And this is kind of a counter example. Do you see the move?
Yeah.
What's the move?
Queen on A4 check.
Yes, queen a4 check.
Knight.
The knight is unprotected. So this is another example, right? This is a fork where these two pieces aren't in any alignment, but where we happen to attack them both with a fork. So again, my point with this is to emphasize that not all tactics are going to be because there is an alignment, but if you see an alignment, definitely stop and look for a tactic because it might be there, whether it's a fork or something else. Pawn fork, a knight fork, a queen fork, whatever, a bishop fork we saw. Now we're going to move into something slightly different because a fork is just one of the many, many kinds of alignments there are in chess. In this position, it is black to move.
Is bishop on A6?
Yes. In this position,
King and the queen?
yeah, we notice there's an alignment between the queen and the king. A fork in the previous example is where we moved one piece and it attacked two different ones. In this case, we have a pin. A pin, I've done a whole lesson on pins as well, called The Pin is Mightier Than the Sword. Feel free to go look it up. It's really cool. But the basic idea, and I'm going to show a few quick examples here, is that a pin attacks two pieces in a straight line, right? In this case, we're using our bishop, but you could do a pin with a rook or a queen, any piece that attacks in a straight line. And we are attacking two pieces. The more important one is in the back, the less important in the front. And even though the queen is very important, she's not as important as the king. She cannot move away from the king or it would be a check. So we are going to win the queen. White can either take our bishop or do nothing, but eventually we will take this queen. Chaotic neutral. Yeah, this might be a chaotic neutral position. Feel free to comment on those ideas. I'd love to hear what alignment you think various positions are. Okay, in this position, I believe it is white to move. And it's kind of complex. Our queen is attacked. Their queen is right in our territory, threatening a potential checkmate if our queen moves. So a lot's going on here. Are we in trouble, or do we have any way out of this as white? This is a really complex one, but the trick here is to pay attention to your alignments. Which of our pieces are lined up with each other or with our opponents? Which ones of them are lined up? How can we punish our opponent here? And also, always when you're looking for tactics, look at your forcing moves. Okay, so this is really nice, right? A few people in the chat have suggested knight f5, as well as here in person, with the idea that this pawn is pinned to the king. It cannot take. The question is, if we do a follow-up, right? So knight f5, this is a forcing move. Our opponent has to move somewhere. Looks like you can either go to h8 or to f8. How might we continue in either case? Let me make sure. Knight f5, let's say they go to f8. How can we continue? Yes, and that is checkmate. Because if you go to f8, queen takes pawn, my knight covers these two squares, as does the bishop, as does the queen. Bishop covers g8, and there's nowhere to go. And it's actually the same if you go to h8, right? Queen takes f6, and the bishop guards every other square. So this alignment actually saves us the game. We might have been in a lot of trouble otherwise, right? Because our queen is hit, checkmate is potentially on the horizon in a few different places maybe. So we got to be really careful. But an alignment, noticing this pin, saves our skin. Okay, this is another really fun one. It is white to move and find the best move. Some people might even recognize this opening. Any idea what to do? So Gabriel in the chat, you were very close, but there is a problem with your move. Yeah, few people thinking the idea, yes. So the problem is if we play knight takes f6, which looks really good, they'll just recapture with their knight or their pawn. But knight to d6, and our queen, this is a discovery, right? So there's multiple alignments happening here. There is a pin, which is that the pawn is stuck to the king. Once our queen attacks it, the pawn can't move with a capture. And there's a discovery. Our queen and knight are lined up, so when we move our knight, we attack our opponent's king. This is a smothered checkmate. It's beautiful. So yeah, really keep an eye out. Yeah, Atulurora, I don't know your name, I'm sorry, but yeah, we can't see your chats. So I'm keeping an eye on the class and the chat and kind of everything going on, but I can see you. Yeah, so really beautiful. This actually comes out of the Caro-Kann. If you're familiar with Eric Rosen, I think he has shown this trap before. It's really quite beautiful. But we can see it's all coming from this idea of alignments. Okay, here's our next example. Pairing with what we talked about last time, right? We've looked at forks now and pins. Now we want to look at what we just added, discoveries, right? So if we have pieces that are lined up and one of our pieces moves out of the way to reveal the attack of another one, that's a discovery. It's a discovered attack. And that's another way we can use alignment to our advantage. So before, we've mostly been looking at how our opponent's pieces are lined up. Now we want to look at how our pieces are lined up as well. So does anyone see any good ideas here for white?
Bishop plus bishop.
How come?
And then we will take the queen plus bishop.
Very good. So our queen and bishop are lined up with our opponent's bishop. If we simply capture, right, a capture is a forcing move. Our opponent doesn't have to take back, but if they don't, we're at least going to be up a piece. Usually you should. But if they take back with the queen or the king, it doesn't really make a difference. This bishop is picked up because we moved our bishop out of the way to reveal this discovered attack. Really, really nice. Okay, here's our next example. It is, I think, white again to move. Yes, white to move. Little trickier, but pay attention to our alignments in this position. How are our pieces lined up in each other's way? And that might give you the answer you're looking for.
E6.
Yes, why? What's your idea? Yeah, Budapest, Gabriel, sorry, in that previous position, the smothered mate, there is a very similar position in the Budapest Gambit. But that one came from the Caro-Kann.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, what's your idea?
So you push the pawn,
Mm-hmm.
and then you take the bishop.
Yes, so we notice that our bishop on this nice long diagonal has a pawn in the way. Some people would mistakenly think this is a bad bishop because our pawn is in the way. That is not true. It's only a bad bishop if it's stuck behind the pawns, but we have the ability to move our pawn forward, and when we do, we attack the queen. There are two attacks going on. We're hitting the bishop and the queen, and you can only save one as black. If you take my piece, you're going to get a bishop and a rook, but I'm going to, well, actually you're not, because I'm going to get your queen with check, and you're not, I guess you are still going to get this piece because it's trapped, but I'm going to get your bishop for it, and you've lost a queen, so that's no good. But if you try and save the queen, then I just take your piece. Discoveries are very, very powerful. Here's another example. This time it is, well, we're going to look at it from black's perspective. But in this position, white played the move. Knight takes knight, which was a mistake. What is wrong with this move? Looks perfectly normal. Just trade a knight for a knight. But the problem is white was expecting black to just recapture with the pawn. And then it's even. I got to move this piece, but it's an even game. But we have an alignment. Our rook and bishop are lined up with our opponent's bishop, which means we can move our bishop with a discovered attack. We attack the knight with our bishop and the bishop with our rook. And there's no back rank threats because we can always escape this way if we have to. So one of these pieces is going to have to move or we're going to take it. If the knight moves, the bishop falls. If the knight doesn't move, we take it, and then potentially the bishop falls. If you try and defend the knight, again, we just take it, and the bishop falls. Alignment's really powerful and applicable in so many different ways. But there's a level up from this. So discoveries have different tiers of power. In this example, it's white to move, I believe. And the first tier is what we just saw. We move a piece out of the way and we attack something. But we can now do better. We can make a discovered check where we move a piece and either the piece we move or the piece that's revealed calls check, because now you got to save your king and the other piece can do whatever it was doing. It can capture whatever it's attacking. So knight f6 check. The rook is stuck behind it. If you're a fan of Levy, the rook, right? It's the rook is going to hit the queen. Knight to f6 check. Critically, we don't want to play knight to e7 because then the queen will capture our piece. But knight f6, the queen is stuck. You can take our knight, but you will never take our freedom. I'm in a weird mood today. I apologize, everybody. Okay, yeah, so discovered check, really powerful tool. I think we have another example of that here. Pay attention to your alignments. See if you can find the best move for white. Yes, why? Yes, pawn d6 check, but just a check alone isn't enough. We call check, and our pawn now attacks the bishop. And I know these are fairly simple, right? This is a beginner breakdown level class, so we're gearing for people who are just kind of learning the game. We will get some more advanced puzzles, but more I'm just trying to get you to see a huge variety of ways in which alignment can really clue you into different tactical themes and ideas. There's so many that you can kind of really dive into, but I want you to just get to experience. D6, and then yeah, we're going to take the bishop. If they play something like this, then we would want to first take this bishop and then take this one, because otherwise we're going to lose our own. Actually, that's not true. We're going to take the queen. It doesn't matter. Chess is easy. Do what you want. But either way, all of this stems from our nice discovered check and our alignment here. Okay, next example, it is white to move. Keep this alignment idea in mind. What do you see?
Is it knight plus pawn?
What's your idea?
Check,
Check, and
and you take the rook.
we take the rook. That looks pretty good to me. That's the move. Knight takes f6 check. And we have an alignment here of our rook and their rook. We move this piece out of the way, and it calls check. And whenever the king moves, or if you take the knight, either way, we will happily eat up this rook. And we have traded a knight for a rook and a pawn. 3 points for 7, always, or for 6, always a happy trade. But now we can go up one more tier. So we looked at discovered attacks, and then we looked at discovered checks, and now we're going to look at the ultimate double check. We're going to move our piece to make a discovered check, but the piece that moves also calls check. This is such a powerful tool because the reason it's so scary is when you call check normally, there's 3 ways to get out of it. You can move the king, you can block the attack, or you can remove the attacker by capturing it. Well, with a double check, you only get one of those options because there's 2 attackers, so you can't remove them both, and there's 2 attackers, so you can't block them both. You have to move the king. So in this position, can you find the winning idea with black to move? Few people in the chat already see it. H takes G3, check. Double check. You cannot take any of these pieces. You can't take the pawn because the bishop, or because the rook. And yeah, this is big, big trouble. White to move, and only has one legal move because we control all of these squares. So the king has to go to G2. And now, what's our follow-up here as black? Rook H2 checkmate, covering all the squares. This opportunity only presented itself because of the unique alignment, right? We notice our rook is lined up with our opponent's king and our pawn, so we can make a discovered attack to get the pawn out of the way, but it's also double check, which means it's just game over. GG's. Next example, it is it's actually black to move here, and in this position, black, wait, is that right? Yeah, black to move, oh yeah. So black to move, and black saw a really nice discovered attack. Black played pawn to f2, attacking the rook, and the bishop on c6 is now revealed to attack the rook on h1. But white saw an even better alignment.
So
White to move.
is it G8?
Okay, what's your idea?
You take it,
Mm-hmm.
and then now pawn G8.
Yes. This is really beautiful. We have a check, and this only works, this forcing move only works because of our alignment. Our pawn and rook are lined up with the king. Rook G8, check. You can't take it because it's defended. You can't move out of the way, so you take. And the problem is, we're going to take and promote, and you can't take the queen because it's double check. The rook is also attacking, so you have to move the king, but there is nowhere to move the king. This is checkmate, all because of this really beautiful alignment that we were able to take advantage of. Okay, so now we have looked at forks, pins, discoveries, and discovered attacks in multiple ways, just regular attacks, discovered checks, and double checks. I've shown this example before. It's one of my favorites chess puzzles of all time just because it's one of the first ones I learned. It's not super, super complex, but it involves this idea of forcing moves and double checks and alignments. I'll give you help with the first move. First move is our forcing move, knight takes f7. The problem is, notice there is an alignment here of these pieces. If the rook moves off of the alignment and undefends the queen, we will take it and get a back rank. So you can't do that. Oops, I wouldn't play that move. That would be bad. That would be very bad. I will take the rook and win the game. So instead, black moves their king here, but now notice there is an alignment between our queen, our knight, and their king. So how can we win the game from here? How do we punish this alignment we have created? Yes, that's the only good one. We have a lot of discovered checks, but none of them are good enough if we just lose our queen, right? We can't just move our knight out of the way and lose our queen. That's no good. But knight to h6 is a double check. So you can't take the queen because I will take your king. And you can't take my knight because I will take your king. So king's got to move. And now, for those familiar with the smothered mate pattern,
Queen on g8.
Yeah, this one is just really pretty. Queen to g8. We defend, so the rook has to take, and we have a beautiful smothered checkmate. The smothered mate is a whole separate thing. I did talk about it a little bit in my lesson on knights. I think it's called the Knight's Tale. Feel free to go look that up. But just an introduction to, again, how the idea of alignment can play multiple roles in any given position, and just, again, emphasizing how powerful, how extremely powerful double check is. But now we're going to switch gears a little bit, because now we're going to look at a whole new type, right? There's so many ways alignment can be involved. We've seen it's involved in defending and cutting communication, it's involved in pins, forks, discoveries, and now a new one. See if you can find with black to move, the best move for black.
Queen g2.
Queen g2. This is a skewer. Yeah, new kind, not a pin, right? A pin is where the less important piece is in front and is stuck. It can't move because then the more important piece behind it gets taken. Here, the most important piece is in the front. It's got to get out of the way, and we take the less important piece behind it. In this case, a queen, which is less important than a king, but it's a bad thing to lose, right? Now black is doing quite well. So keep an eye out for this, right? Another type of alignment. We notice that these two pieces are lined up, and we can punish that by attacking both in a straight line. Here's our next example. It is black to move. See if you can find the relevant alignments in this position and really cause some problems here for the player with the white pieces. And again, always keep in mind your forcing moves. Super, super useful. While you're looking, this is a series called Beginner Breakdown. We've done a whole bunch of videos. You can go find some of those archive videos on YouTube. Just look up Beginner Breakdown and you should find it. And we talk about some of the basic strategies and tactics. Okay, so Hungry Chunky Hamster has found the right move. I love your name. The idea is knight takes d3.
I was going to say that too.
Yeah, how come? Why are we doing this? Well, you got to take it, or you don't want to just lose a piece. And now you have lined up the queen and the rook, so bishop to b5, skewers the queen, forces it to move, and then we can take the rook wherever it goes. And we are happy to trade a bishop for a rook. We are nicely up in exchange. All right, in this position, it is black to move. This is a little confusing. Black is going this way. White is going this way. But it is black to move. So again, take note of any relevant alignments, or if you can use forcing moves to create alignments, you can also use those.
Rook b1.
Okay, rook b1. What's white play?
King on d2.
Only move king to d2.
And then check
Where?
on d1.
Yes. What's your idea?
Because
You're skewering, right? So rook b1 check, forcing the king. The only move is king d2, and now we've created this beautiful alignment, and this king is just kind of ring around the rosy. Check, and we pick up this rook, a nice skewer. Anyone who's also paying attention in a previous lecture on unprotected pieces notices that, yeah, we have some unprotected pieces here and an exposed king, so another signal for tactical themes, right? All of this meshes together, and alignment is another nice umbrella to keep an eye out for in your games. Okay, here's another example, right? There's so many examples of alignments in chess. This is another type of tactic. I'll see if you can find the move first before I explain it, but it's black to move. Z has the right idea in the chat. What? Yeah, so yeah, coordinates, you got it flipped, which is okay. You had the right idea of rook takes f7. The problem is, it's like, well, wait a minute. This piece is only attacked one time. No, no, no. If you try and defend it, it's actually now attacked twice. This is called an X-ray, which is where, I mean, think like a medical X-ray, right, where you're seeing through something. A piece of yours attacks or defends a square through an enemy piece. So you're still lined up with your opponent's piece here. And in this case, if you take back, I just take you. So you can't actually take back. We win that piece. Here's another example. I think I got 2 or 3 more on X-rays. It is white to move here, and white actually makes a critical mistake. White sees, oh, I've got my rooks doubled up. I'm going to make some really big threats. I'm going to make a discovered attack. Knight takes f6, and white's just thinking that this is ball game. I'm doing great. But they miss something. It is black to move and play the best move. How can we use this question of alignment, and especially this tactic of X-ray, where we attack through a piece?
Is it queen draws rook?
Yes, specifically, it's not rook takes. It is, as you said, queen takes rook, because we X-ray to defend our queen through our opponent's rook. If they take us, which they have to, because it's a back rank, then we just take, and it's game. It's a beautiful queen sacrifice, all because of this alignment, right? White thought they had a discovery, but really they had a back rank from an X-ray. All right, here's another example. It is black to move, should be. Oh no, it's white to move. Wait. Yeah, it's white to move. And in this position, white played the very natural move, rook takes queen, thinking, oh, you're silly. Why have you done this? And they thought, well, it's quite obvious, right? You're just going to take my rook, but it's not. It's fine. I'm going to just defend. But now there is a problem for white.
Is it white to move?
It's black to move. So again, in this variation, they took our queen. We take, and well, they just block, and everything's defended.
Rook on e8-1.
Yes, X-ray. This square is not defended by our rook, but it is through the power of X-ray, because once this rook has to move, we just take. Really, really beautiful. Again, a nice idea of alignment, using your pieces to even attack through your opponent's pieces. Please keep this in mind when you're looking for tactics in your positions. If you see one or more alignments, it's a good indication that there might be a tactical idea to look for. And we've looked at so many, right? Pins, skewers, forks, discoveries, pawn forks, knight forks, now X-rays, and it just keeps going. Really quick, I want to show a really nice game. This game was between Tigran Petrosian and, I'd have to see who the next player was, Hans Ree, in I think like the 60s. And it's a really beautiful game. It's very quick. Tigran had the white pieces and played c4, e5, so we have an English, very normal ideas here. Very typical moves, right? Nothing too unusual. White does not want to lose the knight for the bishop, so decides to bring it out into the center. Knight takes, pawn takes, e4 attacking the knight. So a kind of counterattack. Instead of defending black's knight, Black goes for this intermezzo countering our knight, but there is a problem that black overlooked. Pawn takes, and I believe in this position, white played one more move and black resigned. Oops. We'll get back to that position. White played one more move and black resigned. This is a little harder to see, but it's that same X-ray idea we just talked about. Why? To take the pawn. Yeah, with this pawn?
Yeah.
Not exactly. You're close, but there's something even better. Queen b3 is the move that was played. The problem is not so much taking this pawn. That can be relevant. It's the X-ray to this. Because I'm attacking your bishop. And if you move your bishop, I'm attacking your pawn. Okay, well, what if you just defend the bishop? If you take my pawn, I'm just going to take back. I can just take back. I don't have to do anything. Because you're still stuck, right? If you move the bishop, you're in trouble. You can pin me, but I'm getting a queen. This is bad. White's just up a piece. And you can't defend the bishop because now it's pinned to this square. I'm just going to attack you, and you got to move. And white won this game very, very quickly. Really, really beautiful move. Yeah, Petrosian, pretty OP. Okay, so another example of a tactic, this one's a little more advanced, but it also involves alignment, is called interference. So this is where you move a piece in between two of your opponent's pieces to undefend one or both of them. Okay, so in this position, it is white to move. See if you can find the best move. Yeah, what's your idea?
Queen on h5.
Okay, why? Sure, but what's your idea? A check is fine, but we want to be able to use it to gain something. And yes, our favorite hamster, Hungry Chunky Hamster in the chat, Queen h5. The problem is, if you look at black's moves, we cover here, oops, and all of these squares. There's nothing that can block our attack, so the king has to move. And when the king moves, we've cut the communication between the queen and the bishop. So this alignment, we've actually forced black's pieces to get in their own way, and is a really beautiful example of using alignment to find a tactical win. This is called interference. Here's another example. It is black to move. Queen to b3. We get a check. We're attacking the king and the rook. And the problem is here is white can just move out of the way and allow the queen to defend the rook. But what do we do now? Queen b1. Yes. And now the king has to move again, and it gets in the way. We have created an alignment issue once again. Alignment just means pieces are in the same row, rank, file, or diagonal. And here we win this piece because we have created an interference between this queen and that rook. All right, one more example of interference here. It is white to move and play the winning idea. Or I'm so sorry, it's black to move.
Queen on a1?
Yes, queen on a1. Sorry, Lucian Jacon, I don't know what your chat is, but it's amazing, and I'm super interested. Okay, yeah, queen to a1.
And then you'll take a
Which rook?
rook on
Yeah, c1 or 8? There's two rooks.
queen on I'll take a rook to on c8.
Okay, take the rook on c8, yes. So first check in order to cut the communication, create an interference between these two rooks. And now, yeah, we don't want to give up the queen. We could get two rooks for that, but that'd be good. But we take this one first, and now we're just winning everything. The king's got to move, and we can take the other rook as well. Really brutal. Okay, next example here is now something a little different. This is going to relate to the previous ones. But so far, we've mostly been looking at how to use our pieces to attack opponents' pieces in the wrong line, or something like that, right? Or use our pieces moving out of the way to create an attack with a discovery. In this case, we're going to look about intentionally lining our pieces up. So this is called a battery. Whether we're using a queen and rook, two rooks together, a bishop and a queen. I guess technically if you promoted to a bishop of the same color and two bishops, you could do that, I guess, but that's pretty irrelevant. But using these pieces in a line where they are both controlling the same diagonal, rank, or file means you have an excess amount of control and often can be the difference between winning a game. So in this position, we can actually win this game in, I believe, 3 moves. White to move and win because we are going to set up a battery. Okay, queen h6. What is black's move? King goes to f7. And what is our follow-up to form the battery? We want to line up our queen and bishop so they're working together. Yes. Queen h6 check to force our king this way, and now queen f6. And notice our bishop and queen now occupy the same diagonal. This king is forced to the back, and because they are lined up, queen to e7, checkmate. We have formed a battery and are able to win this game. And this is an incredibly useful technique, right? It's useful both for the diagonals as well as with the rooks. In this case, it is white to move, and see if you can find a way to set up another relevant alignment. This one's a little trickier, but I have faith in you to find it. Well, it's not to be insulting, Trevor, but this class is called Beginner Breakdown, so my aim is for people who know how to move the pieces, know the basic rules, but are trying to learn the strategies to continue to improve. There's lots of chess content geared at people of much higher skill levels, and anyone is welcome in the stream, but that's really who I want to help out here. Yes, rook takes h7 check. The problem is we are setting up an alignment by sacrificing, as Numbers Wolf said, the rook. The problem is the king has to take, and now, yes, we have a beautiful alignment with the bishop, pawn, and king that we can add our queen onto to form a battery. King has to step back, and we finish with checkmate. This diagonal battery, incredibly powerful. Okay, next example. It is black to move and play the winning move. This is going to involve a few different alignments. Well, really one, but with a few different ideas.
It's pawn cross pawn.
Where?
On f5.
Yeah, the e6 takes f5. We can't take this way because there's a pin. So pawn takes, and what's your idea with this?
And then you give him a check.
Yes. So this is a discovered reveal of the battery. With 2 rooks, a doubled rooks, another kind of battery, incredibly powerful, because now notice this king is threatened to be back ranked. 1 rook defending here is not enough. If you just try and save the queen, check, mate, no good. But there's nothing else you can do. If you don't save the queen, if you try and stop yourself from getting back ranked, I'm just going to take your queen. Brutal, discovered attack using our battery, our doubled rooks, in order to win this game. A couple more examples here to help kind of finalize this idea. This is a really common checkmate pattern. Not really as much a tactic here. You might already probably see it. It's called the blind swine mate. Not exactly sure why, but
Is it rook cross g7?
Yeah. So the problem here is when we have our rooks doubled against this king on the 7th rank, it's just the game is over. We can happily eat up these pawns, and because our rooks are lined up together, working together, we can cut off every square. It's just really beautiful. So rooks on the 7th can be really powerful. Doubled rooks on the 7th even more so, and that was the test. Here's the real example. we have double rooks on the 7th. How do we use them effectively here when it's a little more complicated? White to move and win.
So white to move?
White to move, yes.
Over rook, knight cross rook.
Okay, knight takes rook. There is, I think, something, that's probably good enough, but there's something even better.
Is it rook cross f7?
Okay, what's your idea?
And then he takes it. Rook on b8.
Yeah, rook takes f7, and there are 2 threats. We are threatening to do exactly what we just did. If you don't take me, I'm going to play check, check. So if you just like run away, check, check, mate, because the knight covers this escape square. So you have to take. But now, check. You can't run away, so you have to block, check, mate, because I cover all the squares. Again, really, really beautiful. Using our lined up pieces, our powerful alignment we've set up of doubled rooks here on the 7th rank. Okay, one final example, I believe, and then I will pass it off. But it is white to move, and there are some batteries galore. This is a nutso position. Feel free to take a look for a second and try and figure out what's going on, but it is complicated. This is a hard one, but I believe in you. Okay, bishop to e4, check, looks very good. We have a really beautiful bishop on this long diagonal. Our queen's cutting off a lot of space. Okay, so black plays pawn to f5 to block the check. Because if you don't, if you just move the king here, then this is checkmate in a few moves. We have a beautiful battery. So you've got a block. Now what?
Bishop cross pawn.
Mm-hmm. Bishop takes pawn. Okay. Pawn takes.
And I'll take the queen and pawn.
Queen takes. And this is a big problem. I have only one move with my king. If I go here, what do you do?
Yeah.
Where?
Is it queen on f6?
Yeah, queen to f6, very simply. Setting up this battery, and there is nothing black can do to get out of checkmate. We're threatening to go either to g7 or to h8. So if the bishop goes here, we just take it. If the bishop stays and guards the square, play some other move, we will go to h8, and this is checkmate. Really, really brutal. There is one way to try and deviate, which is after bishop e4. Well, we looked at king h8, but we saw how that loses. In this position, after queen f6, you can try and like block, but this ultimately doesn't work either. The problem here is we will take, take, take. And we now have set up a new battery, our rook and queen working together to call checkmate. So what I want you to keep in mind from this lesson is the power of alignments as a tactical signal. If you are playing a game of chess and you notice an alignment, whether it's some important pieces, a king and a queen next to each other, or 2 rooks on the same rank or file, or a bishop and a queen lined up, right? Always take some time and look for all of your common tactics. Pins, skewers, discoveries, double checks, discovered attacks, interference, right? All of these ideas we've looked at, setting up batteries, and hopefully this is going to help you improve your chess. As always, it's been a pleasure to have you. I hope to see you again for a future beginner breakdown, but feel free to please stick around for the stream. As right up next, we will have our Grandmaster's Choice class with Elshon? Dorsa Derek Shani, Women's Grandmaster. Should be really awesome, so please stick around right after this.